When we look at that market cap, it's huge. It's in the billions. Okay. Comic books, we can do the same for. We look at the market for comic books. Well, what's the most expensive comic book out there? Well, obviously, Action Comics 1, Detective Comics 27. They're the pretty much holy grail keys in that particular market, and they sell whenever they come up for auction for millions of dollars a piece. So comic books have a very big market cap. Now, coming in number 3, in my opinion, is sports cards, right behind that. And you can argue, depending on what the market's doing at any given time, sometimes sports cards overtakes comic books. Other times, comic books overtakes sports cards.
Yeah.
If that makes sense, if I said that.
The other thing is, one thing I look at when people talk about, pumping up cards and the future of whatever cards, I look at demographics and like how many people are gonna want this 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now. Like, but how in your opinion, how does demographics affect sports card investing and collecting? Just because there's not as many people, like younger people, into baseball in general. And it seems more of basketball and football and just other stuff.
Correct. And you're not wrong in that. There's something in the antiques and collectibles trade, along with demographics that we talk about, which is known as market caps of certain collecting categories. Now, it's very controversial because it's actually hard to get an accurate count of what the actual market cap for a particular collecting category is, because it's always changing, and it's predicated pretty much on what is sold throughout that year. We try to add up all the vintage material that's sold, and we try to come up with a market cap as to how big the overall market collecting category of like comic books or rare coins or sports cards is. So what I can tell you is one way to gauge market cap, and again, this is controversial, it's not guaranteed, it's not proven, is to look at what are the most expensive items in that market selling for at present time. Well, I can tell you right now, if we look at coins, there's coins out there that sold within the past few years for $19 million.
Yes.
So coins right now is one of the largest, most sophisticated, mature markets in the antiques and collectibles trade, other than high-end art, which we're really not going to talk about because let's be realistic. Most of us are not buying $1 million to $100 million to $400 million paintings. Yeah. So it's ridiculous to even have that conversation when you get to that level. Okay. Same thing's true when we look at coins. Most of us aren't going to buy a $19 million coin, right?
Yeah.
But it makes sense because if you look at the coin market, it's diverse enough where there's people at the bottom that just want to own like a silver coin in mint state that may have been minted either by the US Mint, an American silver eagle coin that they can buy for like 50, 60 bucks. And then there's people like me in the market that go after $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 coins. And then you have the people above me that are going after $100,000 coins all the way up to the millions. When we look at that market cap, it's huge. It's in the billions. Okay. Comic books, we can do the same for. We look at the market for comic books. Well, what's the most expensive comic book out there? Well, obviously, Action Comics 1, Detective Comics 27. They're the pretty much holy grail keys in that particular market, and they sell whenever they come up for auction for millions of dollars a piece. So comic books have a very big market cap. Now, coming in number 3, in my opinion, is sports cards, right behind that. And you can argue, depending on what the market's doing at any given time, sometimes sports cards overtakes comic books. Other times, comic books overtakes sports cards.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. If I said that right. Yes, I did. Neither of those markets, though, are large enough to overtake coins at present time. Okay. Now, coins are rooted more in history than nostalgia.
Yes.
Okay. Comic books and sports cards, to a lesser extent, are rooted in nostalgia, but sports cards, because they feature obviously living people rather than just fake created comic book characters, that's also rooted in history a little bit. So you can argue that what's interesting about the sports card market is that it parallels both nostalgia and also history. If somebody wants to do a case study of the life and times of Babe Ruth or Mickey Mantle or Hank Aaron or Ty Cobb, they can do that. He's a real person. So that's what makes that market fascinating. Now, where am I going with this? Well, you brought up demographics. Well, we already know for how large sports cards are, there are a lot of people, especially during the pandemic, that are coming into the sports card market. And it is growing.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is it's changing. And this is the
Mm-hmm.
point where we get to that you just brought up about how not everybody is clamoring anymore for just baseball cards.
Mm-hmm.
We're going after football, basketball, maybe some of the more esoteric stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's causing this market to be more fragmented.
Hmm.
You don't tend to have that problem when we talk about rare coins, especially in
Mm-hmm.
the United States. If someone's going to collect rare coins, I can tell you this firsthand, and they live in the US, they're going to go after coins that were minted by the US Mint from the 1700s all the way up traditionally until about 1950. That's pretty much the classic era of US coinage, because by 1965, you got to remember, there literally was, well, there was some coins still minted with silver, but
Right.
most coins, the government pretty much did away with minting coins 90% silver in 1965 in the US. So most people that are collecting coins, they want the precious metal content as well as the what we call the numismatic value.
Okay.
So they're going after mostly pre 1950 stuff is the stuff that has the value, gold or silver.
Okay.
Okay? When we look at, I've already brought up comic books, pretty much gold, silver, bronze, superheroes. That's where that money is. With sports cards, it's really interesting because it used to be for the longest time that people would gravitate towards the vintage stuff and the antique stuff. Like, obviously, I'm sure you know this, the infamous Honus Wagner card. Everybody wants to own
Yeah.
the Honus Wagner card. Every time it comes up for auction, it sells for millions of dollars. It's almost, I hate to use this word again, but it's a blue chip collectible in that market. Let's be
Yeah.
realistic. Well, what's happening now, you have younger collectors coming into this market,
Mm-hmm.
and they weren't around when the junk wax era shenanigans occurred
Mm-hmm.
that people my age saw. Like, I'm 46. So I remember going to sports card conventions, just watching dealers literally get pissed off and pretty much dump their inventory because all this stuff was overproduced. And this was
Yeah.
quite common. And that's why today a lot of it really has no value that was produced in the junk wax era. Younger collectors didn't get a taste of that. So I hate to say this, the younger collectors, when they get involved in this market, they don't understand the concept of mass-produced scarcity.
Mm-hmm.
They don't understand a lot of these key concepts where you can't truly manufacture an organic collectible. So they come into these markets and they go, well, look at this. I can rip open this pack. I can get this really rare card and I can sell it for $30, $40, $50,000 on the open market.
Mm-hmm.
That's true. I wouldn't want to be the person buying it, though, on the other end,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
because it's mass-produced scarcity. So I think that's what's causing part of this fragmentation where the demographics are changing, because younger collectors, they look at all these other opportunities, whether it's soccer cards, they look at F1 cards, like that, all this stuff. And they look at it under the mindset, well, there's always going to be a collector for that.
Yeah.
Because they don't have the experience from somebody my age who went through all this stuff and had people guide them, or people that have the technical know-how to analyze the antiques and collectibles trade and go, well, gee, if I'm going to invest in sports cards, it's probably best to go after, the vintage cards that are rooted in baseball right now. Or if I want to take a risk, I guess I can get into basketball cards or football cards, go after a Michael Jordan rookie card. But the problem is, if you price chart those cards, they're extremely volatile.
Yeah.
And that's part of the problem. And that's what younger collectors that are coming into these markets with a speculator mindset, trying to convince themselves they're investors, they don't understand. You have to analyze these markets properly. I get it. There's a lot of people. Literally, I was born in 1976. So literally, I came to age probably in the 1990s. So I remember when Nike released the Air Jordans. Of course, I had a pair. I had to have a pair growing up. And I remember when Michael Jordan literally played basketball, it was something to see. It was amazing to even me. And I'm not really a sports fan. But
Hmm.
even I remember watching, this guy's got talent. This is incredible.
Hmm.
So I get the passion that people have for their favorite sports player, for wanting to own these cards. But you also have to look at the market. And if you see a market that is extremely speculative and volatile, you have to kind of understand that there's reasons why that market is performing or behaving in a way it is.
Hmm.
That's my problem with a lot of collectors coming in. So you bring up demographics, it's a good point, but that's how I analyze it.
Okay.